all trauma, anxiety, fears, they all map back to stress in some way. Now, you can have stress without trauma. You can have anxiety without trauma, but you can't really have trauma without stress and anxiety. Even though there aren't really strict definitions of the boundaries between trauma and stress and fear, I think it's fair to say that trauma is a fear and or stress response that's happening at the wrong times, right? It's sort of carrying over from an experience that's making life uncomfortable or in some cases exceedingly challenging. So the first thing for anyone trying to navigate stress is to understand in what kind of stress they're dealing with. Are you exhausted and having a hard time getting your energy up? Or is your energy too high and you're having a hard time getting your energy down? Because the solutions to those are often quite different. It's very hard to control the mind with the mind. It can be done. I say when in moments of stress, either excessively alert stress or excessively fatigued stress, look to the body because there are mechanisms that have been built into the body designed to do this. Now, the reason I can say that is that the physiological side, the double inhale exhale, is controlled by a specific set of neurons in the brainstem that Jack Feldman's lab discovered. Inhale emphasized breathing can be practiced in a way sort of away from stress in a kind of offline approach that can be beneficial for raising what we call stress threshold. So there's a whole other way to look at stress, which is to say, how do I get calmer in the mind when my body is freaking out? On the other side of things, when you're feeling overwhelmed and fatigued, there are two ways to approach that. First is the kind of foundation of fatigue, which is almost always poor sleep and scheduling of sleep. This is something that doesn't get discussed a lot, and I don't think I've discussed this on any podcast previously. But, getting better at sleeping is a whole set of practices. But sleep is a slow tool. It's not a real-time tool. Because if you're feeling exhausted and you have to get up and have your day, deal with children, deal with work, deal with life, we can talk about how to get better at sleeping. But in real time, what you want to do is you want to bring more alertness into the system, focus and alertness. The way to do that is to take advantage of a very well-established medical fact. All medical students learn this. All MDs know this, which is that there's a direct relationship between how you breathe and your heart rate. So when we inhale, it almost feels like everything's moving up. But actually what happens is our diaphragm moves down. When that happens, our heart literally gets a little bit bigger. The volume of the heart gets a little bit bigger, which means that whatever blood in there is moving per unit time a little bit slower. And there's a set of neurons in the heart called the sinoatrial node that sends a signal to the brain and says, hey, blood flow is slowing down. And the brain sends a signal back to the heart and says, okay, let's speed up. And speeds up the heart rate. So the short, concise way to put it is when you inhale more vigorously or longer, you're speeding up your heart rate. This actually, there's a name for it in the medical community. But the important thing to understand is as you inhale, you're sending a neural signal to your heart to speed up. And when you exhale, the diaphragm moves up. The heart gets a little bit smaller, literally, because there's less space there. Then there's a signal sent to the brain. And the brain sends a signal back and says, slow down the heart rate. So if you want to become more alert, you actually can just simply make your inhales a little bit more vigorous or a little bit longer than your exhale. Longer or more vigorous inhales will speed up your heart rate and make you more alert. Longer or more vigorous exhales will slow down your heart rate and make you less alert. The repetitive breathing more quickly and deeply, this kind of thing, or some variant of that, all through the mouth or all through the nose, brings up the heart rate and causes the adrenal glands, which sit right above the kidneys, to secrete adrenaline. They make you more alert. And you see these big inflections in heart rate when people do this. Typically, it makes people feel agitated. At first, they feel a little bit agitated. And then when you exhale and hold your breath for 15 seconds or so, or what you're doing essentially is you're learning to be calm as your body is flooded with all this adrenaline and the heart rate is going. And that is 100% top-down control. What you're doing in those moments is you're learning to take your forebrain and say, fight the temptation to move, fight the temptation to breathe. This particular pattern of breathing, 25 or 30 times followed by an exhale and a hold, and then a big inhale and a hold, sometimes doing more inhaling and exhaling type repetitive breathing. That is really somebody training themselves how to self-induce stress. And we know from some good literature and some emerging science that's still ongoing that it is possible to get comfortable in these agitated states so that your mind is okay, feels okay when the body is feeling like it wants to tremble or move, that you can learn to suppress that activity. The ice bath is another good example of this. Some people go straight to the ice bath because cold water will almost always induce a low level of stress in people. You have to kind of fight it. Even if you learn to love it,
you still have to every time jumping in there. Okay, I got to control the mind essentially to calm.
Right. Exactly. So the body is saying, this is really cold.
This
is really cold.
Get out now.
And you're pushing back on that, and it's top-down control. It's pure top-down control. And you could do this any number of ways. There's actually something called the hour of pain. The hour of pain was actually described to me by a friend of mine, former military special operations guy, who said that they place you. This wasn't through military, but this is a kind of outside the military
extracurricular
activities, placing you into one position on the floor, and you have to stay there for an hour, which can be excruciating. There's so much limbic friction where you want to move so badly because the stabilizing muscles of the body and the feedback in our musculoskeletal system says, move, move, move. I just want to move the tiniest bit. And so all that practice it's just a different version of the ice bath.
Yes.
You're learning top-down control. So, we started off with a question about trauma.
Yes.
And we'll get there. But I think it's very important, just to kind of summarize, that people understand, to just ask themselves the question, am I feeling too much agitation, or am I feeling too much exhaustion? If it's too much agitation, emphasize exhales and do the physiological sigh. Yoga Nidra is also a wonderful practice that is kind of the mirror image of superoxygenation breathing. It involves long exhale breathing, lying down on your back, completely relaxing your body, and learning to completely turn off thinking, which sounds hard, but you can learn how to do it very quickly if you do that practice for about 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the most important questions that we should all ask ourselves anytime we want to learn, or we want to relax, or we want to sleep, is ask ourselves, where are we on this continuum of alertness and sleep? As a culture, we've spent a lot of time thinking about kind of the core things, like get a good night's sleep. Because obviously, the way I think about sleep and rest is when you're not getting enough, and it's different for everybody, but if you're not getting enough sleep on a regular basis, or you're just too stressed out, it's like the hinge on that seesaw is loose. So it's like, you're up, you're down, you're all over the place. And so there's some foundational practices of sleep, hydration, exercise, social connection, good nutrition, whatever that means for the individual, that put you in a place to be able to manage things really well. But what we've been talking about up until now are these what I call real-time tools. I love the ice bath. I've done tumo breathing. I still do it. I really believe it in its virtues. There's some good science about how it helps activate the immune system, all these other great things. But the ability to adjust in real time is what it's about. Because that's, I think, where real confidence comes from. Like you do a lot of public speaking, I do a lot of public speaking, and there's still days where I'll show up and I'm, all of a sudden, like I'll feel my cheeks getting flush. I'm like, what's going on? I have to be able to adjust in real time.
Yep. It's
not sufficient to be like, I'm going to go meditate for an hour, or what did I do wrong the day before? And this is what it is a lot like driving a car. Everyone should know how to manage their internal real estate, their mind and their body, with do's and don'ts of physical practices, of just, practices that don't involve ingesting anything. It also puts you in a position to better navigate those extreme states, right? I mean, the person who decides to dabble with nicotine, like not by smoking, but taking nicotine for focus, if you can't handle and manage your mind in a very alert state, it's just going to make things worse. You'll think that you're in a tunnel of focus, but you actually are in a tunnel of high stress, and nothing good comes out of that. Whereas if you've already mastered what it is to be really alert and focused, and you want to take that to the next level, and you're an adult and it's appropriate for you and your health status, then you're going to get that much more out of it. And whereas I think a lot of people look first to like, what's the thing I can take? And it's like, well, the thing you can take is master your sleep-wake cycle, master your moment-to-moment kind of autonomic regulation, this calm down, get more alert, and do it with some breathing. Or if you like the ice bath, do that. Or if you want to, run up a steep hill and then see how quickly you can calm yourself down using double inhale, exhale type sign, that's cool. There's a huge play space that you don't need to take anything. And then once you feel like you're working well there, well then sure, maybe it's appropriate to go down the avenue of, supplementation or other things. When people are confronted with an anxiety-provoking scenario, in our case, we do this with virtual reality because we need to do it in the laboratory. We find their pain point, essentially. And by pain point, I don't mean extreme fear. I mean the thing that can raise their autonomic arousal, that has them in a mode of considering different options and trying to figure out what is strategic and what they're capable of in that moment. Could be heights, could be confrontation with a predator, animal. It varies by person, people, but everyone has their pain point. Even Navy SEALs that we've brought to the laboratory or other people from the special operations community, each and everyone has their pain point. What they do in response to that pain point is really what's interesting. And what we found was that the pause or freeze response certainly was associated with autonomic arousal, with stress and anxiety. We measure this in the brain and body. And then we found that there were a subset of individuals and animals in the parallel animal work that would confront a fear, not necessarily reflexively, but after some consideration, they would lean into the challenge, essentially confront the thing that was making them feel anxious. And it turned out that that response, surprisingly, was associated with the highest levels of autonomic arousal. The insula took on essentially a change in its activity patterns, this gamma pattern. The heart rate increased, breathing increased, sweating increased. So these are all the marks of an anxiety attack. But here, if you were to just look at the behavior of the person or the animal, what you'd find is that they were marching forward toward their fear. One reason to suppress the somatic response, the bodily response, is that tends to be a unitary interpretation, meaning at this moment I feel alert but calm, so I feel good. But I'm guessing there's a lot of signals coming from the body, and in fact there are to my brain, but I tend to just say, I feel pretty good. Those tend to be very kind of binned responses, and they're fairly generic. You know, I guess we can look to some of our podcasting colleagues like the Jocko Willink or the David Goggins, you know, who are either forcing themselves or are somehow up at 4:30 in the morning and pushing through that, what I call limbic friction. You know, the limbic system is saying I'm tired or I'm anxious, and going against that. So there's literally there's a required suppression of the bodily response in order to imagine how we would feel when we complete this. If we want to be very concrete, we should probably focus on actions. And I'll use fitness as an example because it translates to everybody, whereas people's circumstance is different. Let's say somebody really wants to take on a fitness routine. They hate running, or they want to lose weight in a healthy way, this kind of thing. So we've all heard the example, well, you put your shoes by the door on day 1. Day 2, you put them on. Day 3, you go out the door. Day 4, you walk around the block, and then, and then eventually like they're running marathons. Okay, great. But to sustain that behavior, or even to make the behavior pleasurable and to give you energy, the key is to subjectively reward those steps. So it's not going to be, let's say I go out and I run a mile, and my goal is to run 10 miles in a few weeks. The key is, as you're in the strain of that mile, the hard part, you want to tell yourself, this is the good part. This is the part that gives me energy. And I'll be very surprised if people don't actually feel like they could continue further. So it's a journey of 1,000 miles starts with is made up of, single steps. But the key is to reward the harder steps, not the easier ones and not the ones where you get the thing that you want. Find the wall and push a little bit further through that wall and reward that process. In fact, I'm not telling people to do anything. I'm just saying that our biology is primarily for taking us through these adventures of arousal and relaxation. Waking up in the morning is an exercise in autonomic arousal. Cortisol hits when you wake up. Boom. Can you do that without losing your mind in thought and obsession?
Yeah.
Can you put your head down at night and fall asleep without losing your mind in the previous day's events? These are skills that we have to cultivate.
What does your morning routine look like at the moment?
Morning routine is, and I have to be careful here because whenever I've described my routine in a little bit of detail, people always say, I can't believe you don't go to the bathroom. And it's like, well, of course, I want to
put my pants on,
exactly,
I put my
right
socks
foot,
on.
left foot. So I want to be clear. I take care of my basic functions. But when I wake up, I make a beeline for sunlight. So I'm going to get sunlight in my eyes. I'll probably go into the grave saying this, so forgive me if people have heard me say this before, but the single best thing you can do for your sleep, your energy, your mood, your wakefulness, your metabolism is to get natural light in your eyes early in the day. Don't wear sunglasses to do it. It takes about 10 minutes or so. If you live in a cloudy area, if you're in the UK in the winter, yes.
Or the summer,
maybe you resort to some artificial light as a replacement, but as much as one can, get bright, natural, and if not natural, artificial light in your eyes early in the day without sunglasses. Contacts and eyeglasses are fine. Don't try and do it through a window or windshield. It's going to take far too long. This sets in motion a huge number of different neurobiological and hormonal cascades that are good for you, reduces stress late at night, offsets cortisol, a million different things really that are good for you. So I get that. So then I come back inside, and then I do not drink caffeine right away. It's important in many ways to delay caffeine enough so that you can clear out some of the chemical signals in the brain and body that lead to a feeling of fatigue. So The longer you're awake, the more a molecule called adenosine builds up in your system. And when you sleep, you push that adenosine level back down. When you wake up in the morning, that adenosine level can be 0, but oftentimes there's still some hanging around. Caffeine is an adenosine antagonist. It blocks adenosine function. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's effectively what it does. So if you wake up and you've got 20% of your adenosine still hasn't been cleared out, that's sort of a drowsiness that you woke up with. Then you go and you drink your coffee and you crush that ability of adenosine to have that effect, but it hasn't gone away. So that when your coffee wears off mid-morning, now that adenosine is there and you feel like there's a mid-morning crash or an afternoon crash. So I delay my caffeine intake for about 90 and ideally 120 minutes after I wake up. Because in that way, you bring your adenosine level down very, very low to 0, and then you don't get this rebound crash in the afternoon. For years, I would get this post-lunch crash, and I thought maybe I'm eating too much for lunch, which I probably was, or maybe I'm eating the wrong foods. Turned out it was all related to my timing of caffeine. And your system learns how to wake up naturally.
Right.
You get the natural cortisol and adrenaline.
Give it the time. Yeah.
Give it the time. And people hate this one because it's a little painful for the caffeine addicts, but I'm a pretty serious caffeine addict and I embrace that. And I'll tell you, it also makes the joy of the coffee so much greater.
You're like waiting for that, you're savoring, you're like, my first sip.
It tastes so much better. And that relates to the dopamine system, which I know we're going to talk about later.
Just how triggering are our phones when it comes to dopamine?
Okay, great question. We often hear that, that social media getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit. When we first get on social media for the first time or after a long period of time, the amount of dopamine that's released we think is quite substantial. It's novel. Remember, dopamine is about novelty, surprise, and the sense that we are on some exciting track. That's what dopamine is really about. It puts us into states of readiness, anticipation, looking, seeking, etc., almost always for things outside the confines of our skin. One of the key takeaways from that book, Dopamine Nation, that I've incorporated in my own life is that there are certain activities like cold water that create long-lasting arcs of dopamine. Those can be very useful for putting us into long-lasting motivational states. These are not big peaks and troughs. These are the pain of the cold water, followed by this long, long arc of dopamine. Wonderful. It's kind of an antidepressant, positive motivator, natural stimulus. I always say if you don't have access to an ice bath, cold showers, yes, will work. If you have a shower that doesn't get cold enough, keep in mind that the original studies showing this dopamine increase had people get into 60-degree water, which is not that cold, for 45 minutes to an hour. So your water bill might go up, but you could just draw a kind of cool bath and get in that up to the neck. So, because I realize there are sometimes some cost barriers to people. Not everyone has an ice bath. And I have to say, even though I describe my morning routine accurately, if I were to really optimize it, and I've done this from time to time, I would get up, I would hydrate, and I would immediately exercise. I would use that early, peaking of the cortisol response that comes with waking to get the body into action, sort of Jocko Willink style, right? 4:30. I always see his posts, but I see them at 7 a.m.
Yeah, precisely.
Let's say somebody really wants to take on a fitness routine. They hate running or they want to lose weight in a healthy way, this kind of thing. So we've all heard the example, well, you put your shoes by the door on day 1. Day 2, you put them on. Day 3, you go out the door. Day 4, you walk around the block and then, and then eventually they're running marathons. Okay, great. But to sustain that behavior or even to make the behavior pleasurable and to give you energy, the key is to subjectively reward those steps. So it's not going to be, let's say I go out and I run a mile. And my goal is to run 10 miles in a few weeks. The key is, as you're in the strain of that mile, the hard part, you want to tell yourself, this is the good part. This is the part that gives me energy. And I'll be very surprised if people don't actually feel like they could continue further. So it's a journey of 1,000 miles is made up of, single steps. But the key is to reward the harder steps, not the easier ones and not the ones where you get the thing that you want.
Don't reward yourself for putting your shoes on and taking a step outside.
You could if that was a huge barrier for you.
If it's very hard.
If it was very hard for you.
But running the 10 miles is hard.
Right. Find the wall and push a little bit further through that wall and reward that process. This is the hard part because that's when adrenaline, norepinephrine are getting maxed out. And that's when you have an opportunity to bring dopamine in and teach those neural pathways to slam that back down. The other element that's really important to plasticity is this deep rest phase. And it's associated with the release of the molecule neuromodulator serotonin. Serotonin is a reward molecule, just like dopamine, except that it's released in the brain in response to the subjective experience that we have enough resources. So when we eat a big meal, or we enjoy, even better, when we enjoy a meal with friends or family, and it just feels like one of those incredible evenings, you're reset. It's that feeling of being reset. Has an antidepressive effect. When we are, when you hold, if you hold your child or a partner that you love or your dog, there's this feeling of having enough. And so whereas dopamine is really the molecule that makes us look at things outside the boundaries of our skin, like to be in pursuit of things. It really is the pursuit motivation molecule. Serotonin is really about feeling like we have enough in our immediate environment. And it's so powerful because unless that serotonin box is checked off periodically, we cannot lean back into the dopamine outward pursuit process for very long.
So we need serotonin.
Absolutely.
To feel more, complete, whole,
safe. You need to balance serotonin and dopamine, maybe across the day, maybe across the week. I think in religious practices, all religions really, there's a kind of Sabbath, there's a rest period, for many, I think all of them. That makes sense because there needs to be a renewal